All right, we had several questions about prescription drug prices and another inflation. Who's at fault for inflation? Is it corporate greed or is it the federal government? Um, well, the federal government is financed or at least lobbied with corporate dollars, and they tend to serve corporatists. So, both, can we say both? Corporations and the federal government. The prescription drug price question basically boiled down to, do we need price control? No. People go to Mexico and buy insulin for a fraction of the cost they buy it here in America. Known fact. NPR wrote an article on it last year. You know, thousands and thousands of Americans are crossing the southern border for surgeries, for medicines. And, why is Mexico able to provide drugs so cheaply? We need to copy what they're doing. We need to allow generics. We need to end the laws that, again, corporations have written to protect their profits, so that other companies can compete and innovate and provide cheap, affordable, plentiful medicine. The problem you run into with price fixing is that when it's not profitable to make a drug, a company's not going to make it. And when you start price fixing, you create shortages. And so, if you want to have plentiful amounts of medicine at a low price, you need to get rid of the laws that were written by corporations to protect their profits from competition. So we need to remove anti-competitive laws from our books and allow a more competitive free marketplace when it comes to prescription drugs. This next question is from Mr. Erickson. I'll go ahead and play it.
Good evening. Good evening to both of you. Good evening. My question relates to foreign policy. In light of recent events, the possibility of war seems to be the most likely it's ever been for most college students. Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran have become increasingly aggressive and bold militarily. How will each of you approach foreign policy in the Senate to ensure the United States remains internationally dominant in times of both peace and war?
If I could jump in here as we throw it to Senator Lee first.
Okay. I already made it clear in my response to question number one that foreign policy will be one of my main focuses in Washington. Foreign policy should be focused on peace and stability, not international dominance. When I watched this debate the first time, and Mr. Erickson said, how do we ensure that we remain internationally dominant? Nowhere in the Constitution does it say the USA needs to remain internationally dominant. We are going to make ourselves internationally obsolete if we continue to pump weapons into conflict zones around the globe. We are going to bankrupt ourselves. And beyond just the economics of it, beyond just the crippling inflation and debt that we are saddling Americans with, it's immoral. We are financing the death and displacement, either direct or indirectly, through famine, uh, shortages in medicine and medical care around the globe. And that is awful. We need to stop that. So my foreign policy would be to focus on peace, free trade, and honest friendship. We are not perfect here at home in America. We have a lot of things we can work on. I'm not saying we can't look at other nations and we can't speak out about human rights abuses. But sometimes it seems we're rather hypocritical in areas and conflicts that we highlight. Certain conflicts, certain human rights abuses in certain areas get a lot of media attention, and others are barely mentioned. Okay, um, and and to me, that just screams that there's an agenda. So much of our foreign policy is driven by profit for corporations, profit for the military industrial complex, and for our own lust for international dominance. That should not be our focus. If we want peace and stability to reign on the world stage, we need to be willing to allow other countries to run their own affairs. We need to not meddle through covert operations that the CIA has carried out in their existence, that have caused lots and lots of problems around the world. We need to make sure that rather than in rather than stoke the flames of war and make a conflict worse, we should be coming into a conflict as a mediator. We should always be seeking to stop conflict. And the reason we should always be seeking to stop conflict, not because one side is right and one side is wrong, but because conflict kills civilians. Everyone on this planet should have the right to live peacefully and happily and without being murdered, without being displaced, being without suffering from shortage and famine because of sanctions that the US or the UN has placed on their country. What's happening right now, for example, in Afghanistan, we have uh, blockaded all of their resources, and those people are facing acute famine. Over 20 million Afghanis, acute famine, and we are sitting on the funds of that country. And we're doing it in the name of freedom and democracy. But what we're saying is it's okay or it's worth it for all these people to suffer so that we can push our influence on this region. And that's disgusting. I think the past 50 to 70 years of American foreign policy has trended in an awful direction where we don't care about individuals, we care about our economics, we care about our political power, and that's immoral and it needs to change. And if we fix it, if we focus on peace, free trade, and friendship, um, that will have the benefit, the added benefit, besides being moral, the added benefit will be we'll have less inflation and we'll be able to cut our defense budget significantly and save Americans money.
We're going to keep the responses to 1 minute for the remainder of the program so we can hope.
Nope, wrong.